Prince Eddy's death was faked on the 14th of January 1892, and he was moved to Glamis Castle in Scotland, where he had the world's longest bed and breakfast, which was over 33 years, from 1892 to 1933 plus. And he was photographed in Glamis Castle by a female relative. And the condition for the world's longest bed and breakfast was that one of the children of Glamis Castle would marry the monarch, and that was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. So Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, she was born in 1900, and she was first engaged to the person who became, or David, Prince of Wales, who became Edward VIII, who was never crowned. And within a week of the engagement, Edward VIII told Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon that he was going to abdicate, because he knew that his father, George V, was reigning falsely, because George V's older brother, Prince Eddy, was still alive. So that's why Edward VIII was never crowned. So what Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon did a week after her failed engagement with David, Prince of Wales, who became Edward VIII, she was engaged to George, Duke of York, who became King George VI. King George VI had an IQ of 67, and 66 was retarded. And he had knock knees, terrible stutter, he was an alcoholic and a chain smoker. So Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon said, "Egad, I'm not having sex with him. I'm not going to marry him." So she brought her maid in, which is the whipping boy. And the whipping boy had been with her since 1907, doubling up in photographs. The whipping boy was one of a twin from Waterford in County Waterford in Southern Ireland. And she was essentially the maid. The whipping boy was the maid to Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. And the whipping boy maid became engaged to George, Duke of York, who became King George VI. And even she refused to have sex with George VI, and only she had one child with him. So Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid married the person who became King George VI, and they had one child together by artificial insemination. That was a son, and it was epileptic, and left to die on the gurney. And thereafter, the near-retarded, chain-smoking, alcoholic, knock-kneed stutterer, George VI, was removed out of the royal gene pool in terms of breeding and replaced with another illegitimate royal, Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill was the illegitimate child of King Edward VII, who was himself illegitimate. And Winston Churchill donated the sperm by artificial insemination to King George VI's wife, who was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid, and the resulting child was born above a pub, above the Coach and Horses pub in Mayfair, and that child is a commoner given the name Elizabeth, and you know that commoner, illegitimate Elizabeth today as the uncrowned Queen Elizabeth II.
Who's actually the child of Winston Churchill.
Yeah.